Hey everybody, Pastor Tony here. This is Advent Week 3, leading up to this Sunday, and we are in Day 3, Wednesday. We're in the Old Testament section. Doing a little different. I'm going to start doing the live streaming on our YouTube channel, which I'll try to send out a link for you to subscribe to that, and then we can share the link to that saved live in all of our different platforms to try to spread out and get as many more people. Some of you have voiced that you don't have Facebook or use Facebook, so we'll do that. Today we are in Isaiah chapter 61. It's been a really good week of scriptures reminding us of the mission of God. What God's doing in the world. I love this type of Bible study that we've been doing. In seminary, when I was working on my MDiv, we would have to write papers and do exegesis papers. And part of that exegesis paper was always a biblical theology. And what we do in biblical theology is we take a topic, something that is that we need to research, and we go through all of Scripture, Old and New, and try to find the scriptures that speak to that topic. And when we find those scriptures, what we do is we would have a section of that biblical theology called the common thread or the common theme. And that really gives you a more broad view of what God is doing in the world. And that's what this week really focuses in on, is what God is doing in the world, on the mission of God, but even more so, our role in that. We talked about this Monday, John was not John the Baptizer this week, but he was John the Witness. And he gave testimony to the light that had come into the world, the light that was shining in the darkness. And so John was a witness and gave testimony, and we should see ourselves that way. We are witnesses, and we testify every day to the light that has changed our life, who is Jesus. And then yesterday we talked about in 1 Thessalonians, kind of that same theme, that God's will for us out of Thessalonians is that we be a praying people and that we be a sanctified people. And that sanctification is the setting apart for the purpose of God, setting apart to be on mission with God, setting apart to fulfill that mission that God's doing. And then today is one of my favorite passages. It's amazing how you read these passages for years. I've read them, preached on them. Somebody's calling. Read them, preached on them, and it's just amazing to me how, when you put it in the context of Advent, how much more meaning that they do when you find these themes. So real quick, today we're in Isaiah chapter 61, and this is one of my favorite passages. It's one of my favorite passages that gets carried over and quoted in the New Testaments when Jesus is standing in the synagogue when he's beginning his ministry, and he quotes these scriptures. In Isaiah 61, he says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the broken heart, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners." This is good news. This is really good news. "To proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called mighty oaks, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations." So in these first 4 verses, we find that God is a liberating God. God is on a liberating mission to set the captive free, right? And to bind up the broken heart, to release from darkness the prisoners that have been imprisoned in this world and the sin that we live in. The flavor, if you were to talk about Christianity, the flavor of Christianity, I've heard this said before, is joy. If you were to put a taste or a flavor on Christianity, the Bible teaches us that it would be joy, because it is the gospel, the good news that we have been liberated, we have been set free. God is binding up the brokenhearted. God's message to the world really was distilled down that night in that Christmas story in Luke chapter 2, when an angel of God came and he dropped this message on these lowly shepherds. In Luke chapter 2, verse 10, he says, I bring you good news of a great joy that will be for all the people. So the telling people to just be happy today, and everyone wants to be happy, we find that happiness doesn't fulfill, happiness doesn't satisfy. It doesn't work to just tell people to be happy. Matter of fact, it's annoying. I think it's annoying. Just be happy. Just be happy. Well, happiness is fleeting, but joy is not. Joy, the gospel and the joy that we get from knowing that God has saved us, God has come for us, God has delivered us, God has bound up our broken heart, set us free. That gospel gives us hope beyond everything that's beating us down. And this is a good message for us today. Everyone feels beaten down, and we have joy, and this is the flavor of Christianity. So Peter called it joy, inexpressible and filled with glory. This is God's mission. This is God's gift to us, the good news. And Jesus stood in the synagogue and said, I'm the one who's bringing this good news. I am the good news that God is saving us. God is liberating us. God is freeing us from the bondage of sin and opening us up to his mission. And that's in verses, if you read, move down to verse 8 through 11. He says, for I, the Lord, love justice. I hate robbery and wrongdoing. In my faithfulness, I will reward my people and make an everlasting covenant with them. So God is all in. If you understand the idea of the ancient covenant, it was an agreement between two people that had consequences if either party broke the agreement. And here's the beauty of God's agreements with us. He is a faithful God who will keep his promises, and he makes an agreement with an unfaithful people who break the promise all the time. And so God is all in. And here's the thing, God has the power to see it happen. If you look down, he says, the descendants will be known among the nations and their offspring among the people. And all who see them will acknowledge that they are a people the Lord has blessed. I delight greatly in the Lord. My soul rejoices in my God, for he has clothed me with garments of salvation. See, this is what God does. Clothed me with garments of salvation. He arrayed me in a robe of righteousness. As a bridegroom adorns his head like a priest, and a bride adorns herself in her jewels. For as soil makes the sprout come up, and a garden causes seeds to grow, so the sovereign Lord will make righteousness and praise spring up before all nations. So God makes this everlasting covenant, and his power and his faithfulness will see it through. Read it today on your own. Get into digging in and writing down things that God's saying to you about himself, about you, about his mission, and how you could be a part of that. God bless. Have a great day.